to remove the kids from the home when it was obviously an unsanitary, unsafe environment, but they didn't do it.
New details about the 16 Siders children found hidden in a...
There were so many red flags here, and there were so many opportunities to intervene and to remove the kids from the home when it was obviously an unsanitary, unsafe environment, but they didn't do it. That is not commentary. That is the plain language conclusion embedded in the public record of what happened in Gallia County, Ohio.
So-called House of Horrors in Ohio. Social workers found bruises, roaches, gnats, and much more many years ago. Major red flags. So what happened? I'll explain. I'm Anjanette Levy, and this is Crime Fix.
Think of a case file with a sticky note on the front. Not a warning. A reminder, follow up in 2 weeks. The note stayed there for a year.
For nearly 2 months, I've been telling you that children's services workers in Gallia County had contact with Gary Siders Jr. and Elizabeth Siders and their children before they ever moved to Vinton County. Well, now we're finally getting to see the records that
Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to True Crime Court, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. In 2020, Gallia County Children's Services opened a file on Gary Siders Jr. and Elizabeth Siders. They had 9 children at the time.
Bring Gallia County. Children's Services in Gallia County started investigating the Siders because records show the online school where they were enrolled reported them. At that time, the family was living in this house on Garfield Avenue in Gallipolis. Children's Services considered the children neglected. A juvenile court...
The first referral came from an online school. The family lived on Garfield Avenue. A child enrolled at Ohio Virtual Academy in late fall of 2019. No prior schooling. Caseworkers wrote it down.
Record reads, this agency initiated an investigation on January 15, 2020, regarding a Siders child whose name is redacted. The child was 7 years old. It was reported the child was enrolled in Ohio Virtual Academy, OVA, in late fall of 2019, but was entered with no prior schooling, but presented significant developmental delays, an inability to speak and complete sentences or initiate conversation. It was reported that the child has not been to a pediatrician for evaluation of any medical and/or developmental delays. During the initiation of the case, Christina Siders, the paternal grandmother, stated that the above accusations were true, but then retracted her statement on a later date. So that last...
A juvenile court record from January 15, 2020 reads, the child was 7 years old. It was reported the child was enrolled in Ohio Virtual Academy in late fall of 2019, but was entered with no prior schooling, but presented significant developmental delays and inability to speak in complete sentences or initiate conversation. The child had never been evaluated by a pediatrician.
And there were concerns about the other Siders children. The caseworker wrote, at the beginning of this agency's investigation, concerns about another child, age 13, not completing school through the OVA was raised due to her being enrolled on January 6, 2020. But as of February 4, 2020, she had not logged into the account to complete schoolwork. On February 4, 2020, she was officially withdrawn from the OVA. OVA considered the child to never have started based on no records being provided, except those collected during enrollment. After further investigation, it was determined that the child was enrolled in Gallia Digital Academy program on December 12, 2019, but no completion of schoolwork can be provided. The OVA program stated that the Siders family is not an appropriate fit for their program and believes that a traditional brick-and-mortar school would be in the best interest of the children. The social worker wrote that the concerns were about all...
Then the caseworker added this another child, age 13, was enrolled but never logged in. By February 4th, the school withdrew her. The academy's conclusion was direct. The Siders family is not an appropriate fit for their program. Those are the words in the record. Not a political opinion. A school's written determination.
Having contact with the school about the children, it wasn't the parents. Guess who it was? It was Grandma Christina Siders. She was the one in touch with the school about the children, not Gary Jr. and Elizabeth. All of the children who were enrolled in online school were performing at incredibly low levels academically. because they were barely logging on to online school, according to the caseworker. The caseworker wrote, "The school has since raised concerns regarding the children age 12, age 11, and age 9 being low academically and performing below grade level expectations. One child is at a 40%."
And here is the detail that changes the picture. The person communicating with the school was not the mother or the father. It was Grandma Christina Siders. She confirmed the reports of severe educational neglect, then retracted. The kids' academic levels collapsed. One child at 40% attendance. Off track in math, literature, social studies, history, and science.
The oldest child was given an assessment on January 19th, 2020 by her teacher, who found that she is a non-reader. The child knows 14 out of 26 lowercase letters, 21 out of 26 uppercase letters, and 0 out of 26 letter sounds, and the only pre-primer word one knew was "and." In addition to struggling with the alphabet, one child can count 1 through 12 before making mistakes. On February 28, 2020, it was reported that the child was given an assessment that found she had not made any academic progress within the last 10 weeks. Neither Gary nor Elizabeth were employed at this time. Gary Jr. listed himself as self-employed, and the records show they qualified for Medicaid and food stamps.
The caseworker wrote that the oldest child knew 14 of 26 lowercase letters, 21 of 26 uppercase letters, 0 of 26 letter sounds, and the only pre-primer word she knew was "and." Gary and Elizabeth were not employed. The family qualified for Medicaid and food stamps.
Their hygiene was poor, and they always wore the same clothes. The caseworker wrote, "Elizabeth Siders, the mother, and Gary Siders, the second, father, are non-compliant with following the recommendations of the school. Medical examinations, physiological examinations, physical examinations, speech therapy, vision/hearing screenings, and participation in intervention programs. Based on interactions with the family, and specifically the children, there are concerns that all of the children need to be assessed for delays, developmental disabilities, and other educational needs. Additionally, it appears the parent/caretakers are either unwilling to or are not capable of assuring the children's well-being when it comes to educational, developmental, and mental health needs."
Hygiene was poor, the same clothes every time. The record states, the parent caretakers are either unwilling to or are not capable of assuring the children's well-being when it comes to educational, developmental, and mental health needs.
A shelter care hearing was held later that month, and that's where a court determines whether children should remain with their parents or be placed in a shelter. That means with foster care. After the hearing, the court found, as stipulated to by the parents, there are reasonable grounds to believe that the child is in danger from her surroundings and that protective supervision of the child is necessary to prevent the child's physical and/or emotional harm. The child is in the care and custody of her parents, Gary Siders II and Elizabeth Siders. Children's Services began working with the family on January 15, 2020, after receiving a report that a child had been enrolled in Ohio Virtual Academy for school in late fall of 2019 with no prior schooling. She presented with significant developmental delays, inability to speak and complete sentences, or initiate conversation. She had not been seen by a pediatrician for evaluation of any medical and/or developmental delays. There were also concerns that the other school-age children in the family were performing well below grade level expectations after they had allegedly been homeschooled. Likewise, the other children have not been evaluated. The Siders children were placed on protective supervision status, meaning a caseworker drops by unannounced for visits and ensures that the family follows a case plan. The children were not removed from the Siders' home. They were allowed to stay with.
A shelter care hearing followed. The court found reasonable grounds to believe that the child is in danger from her surroundings. And then came the decision the children stayed in the home. Protective supervision only. A caseworker would drop by unannounced. That was the plan.
Their parents. By October 2020, the judge presiding over the case found that reasonable efforts had been made to keep the children from being removed from their parents, and the case, it was closed. The court's order states, the court further finds that it is in the best interest of the child to remain in the custody of her parents, the protective supervision be terminated, and that this case be closed. It is therefore ordered that the child remain in the custody of Elizabeth and Gary Lee Siders Jr. It is further ordered that protective supervision be terminated. It is further ordered that this case be closed. That's it.
By October 2020, the court closed the case. The order says, "It is therefore ordered that the child remain in the custody of Elizabeth and Gary Lee Siders Jeter. It is further ordered that protective supervision be terminated. It is further ordered that this case be closed." Closed.
In December of that same year, just 2 months later, the Siders and their 9 children had moved into the house on Honeysuckle in Cheshire. We've shown it to you before. And Children's Services opened a new case, this time over concerns that 4 of the children had high levels of lead in their systems. Caseworker Aaron Cantor wrote, "There were concerns that parents, Elizabeth and Gary, were not completing medical follow-ups. The medical staff had reported that high levels of lead can lead to developmental delays. During the initiation on December 8th, 2020, Caseworker Cantor was denied access to the home and asked to come back because the children were sleeping. There were a number of red flags in Caseworker Aaron Cantor's affidavit. She was denied access to the children at times, and the conditions in the home were disgusting."
2 months later, the family moved to a house on Honeysuckle in Cheshire. Children's Services opened a new case, this time for elevated lead levels in 4 children. Medical staff warned that high lead levels cause developmental delays. So here is the national security angle in its smallest, most dangerous form, when a state agency cannot see what is in front of it. How many other case files are closing the same way tonight?
Cantor wrote, "At the beginning of this agency's investigation, Caseworker Cantor was allowed access into the home on December 9th, 2020, but access to the children was denied. While in the home, concerns were raised due to a high population of roaches, flies, and gnats. After further investigation, the family has now become compliant with medical appointments, but medical staff are concerned that the family will stop coming to appointments once the case is closed, as this happened the last time the family had an open case. The children's medical provider and Caseworker Cantor are in contact often regarding the well-being of the children. The physician has stated the children have an odor, but seem to be in good health. The physician..."
Caseworker Aaron Cantor arrived on December 8, 2020. Denied access to the home. Told to come back because the children were sleeping. The next day, she got inside. The record lists a high population of roaches, flies, and gnats. The physician later noted the children had an odor.
Another child's speech, as she is almost 5 years old and cannot speak any clear language. Caseworker Cantor would like the child to have a speech evaluation to address this concern. Caseworker Cantor believed the children were at risk for harm and dependency, and again requested court-ordered supervision of the children. This time, she saw potential signs of physical abuse that couldn't be explained. Cantor wrote, "Though the concerns of medical neglect have been addressed and resolved, the refusal to access the upstairs of the home and the children raises new concerns due to there being circular linear bruising on the back of one child's thigh and the lack of being able to see the children. Caseworker Cantor now has concerns of possible abuse and/or severe neglect."
Cantor flagged a child, almost 5 years old, who could not speak any clear language. Then she wrote the sentence that should have ended the debate. Circular linear bruising on the back of one child's thigh. She requested court-ordered supervision. The parents became agitated when questioned.
Caseworker Cantor also saw insect bites on another child's arms along with scratches. The child also was tugging her ear and scratching her head profusely. The parents were questioned regarding the bruising. They became agitated and stated they were unaware of any bruising. The parents also stated that the child has one cavity on her baby tooth and are not concerned about it. Caseworker Cantor has noticed the parents are always in the same clothing and do not have consistent hygiene, nor do the children. Despite all of this, Gallia County Job and Family Services did not seek custody of the children. The agency requested protective supervision, even though Gary Jr. and Elizabeth were described as uncooperative.
Cantor also noted insect bites on another child's arms. Scratches, the child tugging her ear and scratching her head profusely. Same clothing. No consistent hygiene. And despite all of that, the agency did not seek custody. Protective supervision again. That phrase again.
By June 2021, the court found the caseworker had helped Gary Jr. and Elizabeth complete their case plan, and the court determined it was in the best interest of the children to remain with their parents. The case was closed. Later that year, the children were supposed to attend Ataville Elementary School, but guess what? They didn't show up. The Siders had disappeared.
By June 2021, the court found the case plan complete. The children stayed. The case closed. Later that year, they were supposed to attend Ataville Elementary. They never showed up. The family had disappeared.
Home.
Yes, it was very detailed. So
Squalor,
they knew.
gnats, flies, poor hygiene. Yeah, and they left the kids there.
They left the kids there, and they initiated a plan, and they had what was called protective supervision.
The record already knew. Read the affidavit again. Concerns of possible abuse and or severe neglect. High population of roaches, flies, and gnats. Circular linear bruising. And the response was not removal, it was paperwork.
And to remove the kids from the home when it was obviously an unsanitary, unsafe environment, but they didn't do it. I just can't say what these caseworkers saw when they walked in there, but if they were making surprise random visits, it seems difficult to believe that the family could have put on a show with no notice, and they wouldn't have seen something that seemed off. So that's what is baffling to me.
There were so many red flags here, and there were so many opportunities to intervene and to remove the kids from the home when it was obviously an unsanitary, unsafe environment, but they didn't do it. That was said about this case. It is also the thesis of the entire file.
Right. So it's like, how much more do you need? You know, between the unsafe, unsanitary conditions, the lead in the bloodstream, potential signs of abuse. I mean, there were red flags all over it. So it's hard to imagine that they did everything they needed to do. Their reaction was very underwhelming and I think potentially unsafe.
So you see some balls potentially dropped here by Children's Services in Gallia County.
Between the unsanitary conditions, the lead in the bloodstream, the potential signs of abuse, the red flags were all over it. The response was underwhelming, potentially unsafe. Those words are not an exaggeration. They are the only logical reading of what the county itself documented.
And I hate to make this leap, but it makes you wonder too, if there had been something more done, would the alleged sexual abuse of the other child maybe not have happened?
Yeah, we can only speculate, but it's definitely a question that would come into my mind as well.
Well, we're going to keep an eye on it and see if we learn a whole lot more. Dr. Daniel Bober, thank you as always for your time and your expertise.
My pleasure.
So the question left in the public record is this: if someone had opened the upstairs door in December 2020, what would have been different? The paperwork already knew. Now, we want you to look for yourself. Pull the Gallia County Juvenile Court records from January and February 2020, the shelter care affidavits, and the caseworker's motion. Read the bruising description, the denial of access, the school withdrawal. Then tell us in the comments, say, what is the single line in that file that you think should have triggered removal? If this breakdown matters to you, like, share, and subscribe to True Crime Court. Turn on notifications, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence.